Get her loose! Come on!
When Space announced that it would be released in September 1975, I counted each day waiting until the program was broadcast. The first episode was very excellent and I loved the entire series. Until now, I still remember very clearly the feeling when seeing the moon leave orbit. The Eagle ship silently flying through space and the calm face of Martin Landau in a world with no way back. It was only many years later, when having the chance to watch again and read more about the behind the scenes, that I realised there were many strange things that as a child I had never noticed. Do you know that the famous tight-fitting uniforms made the actors unable to wear underwear? Or that one of the greatest science fiction scientists like Isaac Asimov once publicly criticised the film, and that there are familiar characters simply disappearing without any explanation. Today, I want to retell 20 behind-the-scenes stories that few people know about Space 1999. 20. The no underwear uniforms that caused controversy. The first time watching Space 1999, my mother and I were very shocked when seeing the bold costumes of Moonbase Alpha, the thin outfits tightly hugging the body fully, showing the curves of the female actresses. Few people know that to achieve that visual effect, the designer Rudi Gernreich required the actors not to wear underwear inside the costumes. The thin, highly stretchable fabric was chosen to create the feeling of a free future without constraints, but in reality made actresses like Barbara Bain have to move extremely carefully step by step. The studio lights shining directly revealed every contour, causing embarrassment and discomfort throughout the filming process. Behind the scenes, fierce controversy broke out. Many people thought the design was too revealing, not suitable for a serious science fiction atmosphere. But the film crew still kept the original idea. Those uniforms, although truly uncomfortable for the actors, became a characteristic symbol of the series, an effort daring to challenge the limits of that time. 19. The feud with the father of sci-fi. I still remember clearly when Space 1999 had just been released. Isaac Asimov publicly called the film garbage and an insult to science. He wrote a long article in the newspaper analysing each mistake in detail. The explosion pushing the moon out of orbit would actually completely destroy it. The moon reaching near other stars within just a few years is impossible. He also pointed out that using the dark side of the moon is a mistake, because there is no part of the moon that is always dark. Asimov also praised the visual effects and design, but overall he thought the plot lacked logic, full of basic scientific errors, and the characters did not have real human depth. The controversy spread among viewers. Some defended the series for its bold idea. Others agreed with Asimov that the film was too far from science. The film crew quietly continued filming, but the criticism from the father of science fiction, the person whose books were once a source of pride on many people's shelves, still left a wound. At that time, science fiction films were not only for entertainment, but also a fierce debate about correctness and meaning. 18. Cast conflict because of money. Few people know that behind the united appearance of Moonbase Alpha, money conflict silently divided the cast. Martin Landau and Barbara Bain, the famous couple from previous films, received very high salaries for the roles of Commander John Koenig and Dr. Helena Russell. Meanwhile, Barry Morse, who played Professor Victor Bergman, an important character throughout the first season, was significantly reduced in salary or faced disputes in contract negotiations. Morse chose to leave the film after season 1, not saying harsh words, only quietly leaving. Later, he even joked that I wanted to work with adults for a while. Many sources say Morse voluntarily left because of fatigue with the filming schedule, but most confirm the main issue was money and unsatisfactory contract terms. Those salary figures partly broke apart the family on the moon, causing the character Bergman to disappear suddenly without any explanation or farewell. In the filmmaking era of the 70s, money was sometimes heavier than collegiality and the common ideas that people once shared. 17. The sex appeal character was forced to be added.
And in this I'm playing an alien. I'm playing a psychon. You don't know what a psychon is? No, I don't blame you. It's a planet that...
Do you still remember the character Maya, the alien girl with the ability to transform, appearing in Season 2 of Space 1999? However, in reality, the image of Maya did not originally appear in the original script. This character was added later to attract young male audiences, especially after the rating of Season 1 was not as expected in some markets. Catherine Schell played Maya with seductive beauty, the ability to change form and transformation scenes full of suggestion, clearly a sex appeal factor carefully calculated to retain viewers. But that decision caused strong reactions from Season 1 fans. Many people thought Maya removed the lonely, quiet spirit focusing on isolation and the mystery of the moon journey. They felt the series was overly commercialized, changing from deep sci-fi to lighter entertainment action. Although Maya brought new attraction, the price to pay was division within the fan community. At that time, adding physical appeal elements to save ratings was common. But with Space 1999, it was like a deep cut into the original soul of the series. 16. The creator denied his own child.
I've got to tell you that I'm very disappointed because you haven't got any monsters. I said, no. He said, well, in America at the moment, monsters are the rage.
Everyone knows that although being the father of Space 1999 Gerry Anderson publicly denied Season 2 of the series, he abandoned creative control, refused all interview invitations related to the sequel, even directly said that he no longer considered it his child. Season 2 changed too much compared to the original idea, from a quiet, lonely tone focusing on isolation and the mystery of the moon journey to faster action, more alien monsters, and added light humour elements. Anderson felt the series had lost the deep science fiction spirit that he had built, replaced by a commercialization to save ratings. He once shared in a rare conversation that Season 2 was no longer what I wanted to tell. That sadness was quiet but clear, like a father seeing his child go the wrong way but unable to pull back. In the filmmaking era of the 70s, when great ambition met revenue pressure, such decisions often left emotional wounds for the creator himself. 15. Actor was seriously injured on set. As a big fan of Nick Tate from before Space 1999 appeared, I was very shocked when knowing he was seriously injured right on set. Nick Tate, who played Alan Carter, the brave pilot of Eagle, always performed dangerous action scenes himself without using a stunt double. Once in a chase and collision scene, he suffered a serious head injury bleeding and had to be urgently hospitalized. Another time, a large explosion scene suddenly had a technical error. The fire burst stronger than expected. He was severely burned on his hands and face and had to be hospitalized twice for treatment. At that time, safety on set was not emphasized like now. Actors often bore risks themselves to make scenes as realistic as possible. Nick Tate still persisted in continuing filming after recovery without a single complaint. Those injuries, although healed, still left marks, reminding that in the fictional universe full of adventure, physical pain was still very real and close. He later said that a little pain is acceptable as long as the audience believes in the story. 14. The craziest idea on television. Everyone knows that the main idea of Space 1999, a nuclear explosion pushing the entire moon out of Earth's orbit, turning it into a giant space travelling ship, sounds completely crazy. Gerry Anderson himself, the creator of the series, later also frankly admitted, "This idea is illogical from beginning to end." He said in a rare interview that there is no explosion strong enough to push the moon away without completely destroying it. And the journey to other planets in just a few years is something science cannot accept. Yet he still decided to pursue it because he wanted to create a science fiction series completely different from everything at that time. The confined space of Earth was replaced by endless isolation in the universe, no way home, no rescue. That idea was born from the pressure to make something bigger, more bold, after the original project was rejected. Although knowing it was illogical, Anderson still chose it to tell a story about the fragility of humans before the vast universe. Looking back now, that very craziness made the series special, an ambitious dream, although full of scientific holes. 13 series was born from a rejection. Do you know that Space 1999 was originally not a completely new independent series? Gerry Anderson intended to make the second season of the series UFO, his previous science fiction film set on Earth fighting against aliens. But when presenting the idea to American television stations, they flatly refused that it was too familiar, not big enough. Under pressure to make something more grand, Anderson decided to completely change. Instead of Earth being attacked, he blew the entire moon out of orbit with a giant nuclear explosion. No more base on Earth, no more way home. Only 311 people wandering in the endless universe. That extreme concept was born from that rejection, turning the project from a sequel into a journey of isolation full of tragedy. At that time, daring to change so much was a huge risk, but Anderson chose it to tell a different story. Looking back now, that rejection created the characteristic soul of the series, an ambitious dream, although full of instability. 12. Main characters disappeared without explanation. If paying attention, you will realise that Bergman, Morrow, Kano, important characters of Season 1, gradually disappeared from the screen without any explanation. Right, no death scene, no farewell, no clear reason. They simply no longer appeared. Fans later joked that they died in a budget meeting. In reality, the problem lay in production costs. A tight budget forced the film crew to cut main actors to save money. Barry Morse Bergman had left earlier because of salary disputes, but with other characters like Paul Morrow or David Kano, the decision to remove them was to reduce financial burden when Season 2 changed direction. There was no script explanation, no farewell scene, only a sudden gap that made the audience confused and regretful. In the filmmaking era of the 70s, when money determined the survival of a series' favourite characters, often had to be sacrificed quietly like that. Those gaps left an indescribable sadness, like losing a part of the Moonbase Alpha family. 11. The director burned money with 40 takes per scene. Those who watched Space 1999 from the early days probably still remember that the opening episode had a very different feeling, like a film rather than television. The person behind that was Lee H. Katzin. He did not work in the usual way of TV at that time. Katzin wanted everything to be precise, correct lighting, correct movement, correct emotion. And to achieve that, he was willing to shoot a scene many times. There were scenes carried out dozens of times. Actors had to repeat each movement, each line. The crew had to wait, adjust, then shoot again. Meanwhile, each metre of film continued to be consumed, each working hour continued to add cost. At first, the result was very impressive. The episode had image quality and atmosphere that few series at that time achieved. But behind that, the production department began to feel pressure. The filming schedule lasted longer than expected, costs increased day by day. 10. The Eagle ship was too expensive. If asking what I remember most about Space 1999, many people will immediately think of Eagle, those ships with an exposed frame, both simple and very real. This design came from Brian Johnson. Instead of making a purely imaginary ship, he designed it as if it could exist in real life. The model was built with high detail frame. Engine cargo module could be changed. When filming, each movement of the ship was carried out slowly with weight, creating a very different feeling compared to simple effects often seen on TV, and that made the attraction of the series. But behind each flying scene was a lot of effort. The model had to be carefully adjusted, the lighting had to be set at the right angle, the camera had to move precisely. Each scene took more time than usual, meaning the cost also increased. No one in the crew denied that Eagle was a success in terms of visuals. But over time, people also realised that maintaining that level of detail for the entire series was not a small burden. 9. War with the Union. During one production phase, the crew decided to move the studio from Elstree to Pinewood without notifying the Union. Overnight, all equipment sets and trucks vanished, leaving the crew stunned. The immediate consequences were severe. Union leaders were furious, some members were blacklisted. Access to filming areas was restricted, and each shooting day became a survival negotiation. Everything was closely monitored, from set construction to equipment movement. In hindsight, these seemingly small, behind-the-scenes decisions created pressures that even the fictional universe of Space 1999 could not rival. 8. National power crisis. The 1970s in England were not always stable. There were times when electricity was cut by area by time periods during the day. For many people, that was a daily matter, but for a film crew like Space 1999, it was a very specific challenge. On set, everything could still continue. Some studios had backup generators allowing lighting and cameras to operate. Actors still acted, scenes were still recorded, but the problem lay in the next step. The film reels needed to be taken to the lab for developing and processing. And those labs did not always have a stable power supply. The result was that scenes already filmed had to wait, sometimes waiting many days, even longer. This caused the progress to be extended. Post-production people could not work according to plan. And with a continuously produced series, each small delay could spread into big pressure. 7. An unprecedented huge budget. At that time, the cost per episode of Space 1999 was something few people could imagine. About £300,000 for one episode, a very large number for television in the 70s. That money was used to build sets, models, effects, and maintain a higher visual standard than average. When watching, the audience could clearly feel the difference. Everything looked more real, with more depth. But behind that, the financial problem was not that simple. High cost meant pressure to recover capital. The series was expected to sell well in many markets, especially the American market. When that did not happen as expected, each episode broadcast carried a part of financial burden. 6. Failed in the American market. From the beginning, Space 1999 was not only made for British audiences, it was built with a clearer goal: entering the American market, where television had a much larger scale and revenue. The cast was selected with familiar presence to American audiences. The storytelling, pacing, even character building all had a more international nature compared to many series of the same time. But when introduced to major networks like ABC, NBC, or CBS, the response was not as expected. No major broadcasting contract was signed. The series was later still shown in America, but in a syndicated form, by region by local stations. That helped the film reach audiences, but did not bring stable revenue like a national contract. With high production costs, the absence of a major partner became a significant problem. Not because the film had no viewers, but because the financial model. 5. Banned episode. One of the strangest facts about Space 1999 is that some Season 2 episodes were actually banned from airing in the UK. The main reasons were excessive violence or scenes considered too bizarre for TV audiences at the time. For example, certain episodes depicted alien creatures with extremely unusual appearances and behaviours, causing networks to worry that children or sensitive viewers might be disturbed. Additionally, some scenes posed direct threats to the Moon Base Alpha crew, combined with unsettling special effects that heightened tension. Consequently, network executives decided not to air these episodes or to heavily edit their content before broadcast. This sparked curiosity among fans, turning the banned episodes into cult legendary pieces, with enthusiasts hunting down original versions to watch in full. It clearly shows that Space 1999 constantly pushed the boundaries of science fiction. At the time, not only visually, but also in storytelling. 4. The ending that never happened. Many viewers of Space 1999 always felt that the journey would eventually lead to something bigger. A final explanation or destination. In fact, such an ending was once planned. Jerry Anderson had outlined a sequel idea. The moon's journey was not random. An extraterrestrial force had orchestrated it all as a kind of experiment to test whether humanity could survive the challenges thrown at them. In the envisioned finale, Moonbase Alpha would reach a place unlike any planet, a massive artificial structure gathering worlds that had been displaced in the same way. Humanity would no longer be alone. But this concept required enormous production costs, which were not feasible at the time. The series ended without a definitive explanation. 3. Catherine Schell, once rejected for another role. A little-known fact about Space 1999 is that before becoming Maya, Catherine Schell actually auditioned for a different role but was rejected. Initially, producers were looking for an actor to fill another character, and although Schell impressed with her talent and presence, she didn't match the original vision. Luck favoured her when the production team later created the role of Maya, a shape-shifting being from the planet Psychon, and immediately thought of Schell. Thanks to her expressive acting, nuanced gaze and graceful physique, Schell turned Maya into one of the most beloved characters, mysterious yet charming. This demonstrates that sometimes a rejection can lead to an even greater opportunity and highlights how sci-fi casting can be full of surprises, giving rise to iconic characters remembered decades later. 2. Unique musical score. One factor that set Space 1999 apart was its distinctive score composed by Barry Gray. Unlike other sci-fi of the time, Gray not only used a traditional symphonic orchestra, but also experimented with electronic instruments from synthesizers to devices creating spatial sound effects. This established a distant future atmosphere, mysterious, occasionally tense, making viewers feel the isolation of the moon base crew. Recurring musical motifs across episodes evoked the sensation of being in another world where science and mystery intertwined. Gray's score also enhanced the visual experience, making scenes of Eagle spacecraft models flying through space more vivid and majestic. Thanks to this music, Space 1999 became memorable not just visually, but as a unique auditory experience, cementing its cult fan status in sci-fi history. 1. The £6 million gamble that failed. Despite facing many challenges, Space 1999 continued to air in multiple regions. Audiences kept watching and the story could have gone on. However, the final decision did not come from the viewers. Lou Grade, the man behind the financing and production, chose to end the series. The reason was not the content itself, but a shift in direction. He wanted to focus resources on cinema. One of the subsequent projects was Raise the Titanic. As a result, Space 1999 concluded without a sequel. There was no full explanation, no clear ending. It didn't end on screen, it ended with a production decision behind the scenes. Looking back, what many remember most is not just the story of a drifting moon, but the feeling that the journey could have continued if circumstances had been slightly different. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you won't miss our next videos. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next video.